Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. Travis Jewett is a chiropractor and strength coach in Northwest Iowa. He is an SFG, which is the StrongFirst kettlebell course, and the SFL, which is the StrongFirst lifters, which is barbell, beast tamer, and teaches the StrongFirst for clinicians course and the one-day StrongFirst barbell course. He is also a keen mobility teacher, and he works for MobilityWOD and teaches the MWOD performance workshop and the MWOD 102 coach course. He works with people of all skill level backgrounds, mixing clinical work and strength and conditioning to help people optimize their life. So he's married and has 4 children, I believe. So I'm surprised he has time to do anything. And he obviously travels a lot to do his seminars and coaching. So look out on his clinicalstrength.co for when he might be in your area. And we'll put your email address as well in the show notes. Absolute pleasure to have you on today, Travis. Thank you for joining us.
You are very welcome.
So, Travis, I'd love to start by asking you, I guess, how's your approach to strength and conditioning and injury care and prevention changed over the past decade as you've grown in your life as a dad, a chiropractor, and a coach?
Yeah, I've practiced now for like 11 years. And I would say that what has changed more than anything is to become simpler in my approach with people. And I've really started to understand kind of how very basic strength and conditioning can interact well with any of the manual work I might do with someone as a chiropractor. And just going back and helping people understand that I can always get them started in the right direction and point where they need to go and help give them a map to read. But in the end, like, they kind of have to take what I have given them and run with it and come back and check with me more than anything, and not grow dependent on what I'm doing to them to help them improve. So it's really just been about saying to myself, what's the least amount of things I can give somebody to get them going in the right direction?
That's interesting. And so when you first got into, say, 11 years ago, into this area, what was your approach then?
It was much less focused, I guess, is probably the best word to use. And it was really based around more what I learned in school, which was lots of little exercises that were meant to, strengthen the oblique or, the transverse abdominis, or, we want to make sure the glute fires before the hamstring, or it ended up being these really detailed and difficult to explain to a patient exercises. And I started to get frustrated because I thought to myself, well, why am I trying to break all this down into all these little itty bitty pieces and hoping that they come together as a big picture, instead of just saying, well, how about we discuss your back pain and then I teach you to deadlift? Because with one move, I can cover a lot of things if I coach you how to execute it well, instead of trying to explain 5 or 6 different exercises to you and you leave in my office not understanding how those will fit together into something useful.
That's interesting. And is that typical of a chiropractor? Perhaps you can give us a bit of description of what a chiropractor does and let us know whether you're a typical chiropractor.
I don't think I am, but my experience is just kind of unique to myself and the colleagues I have near me in my state and locally. I would say as far as where I practice, I'm unique. As far as profession-wide, I really can't say for sure. I think there's a lot more people trending in this direction than there used to be. But as far as a traditional chiropractor is based around the idea of finding areas in the spine that might not be moving well or might be inflamed. And there's starting to be some literature that could show that maybe there's some evidence to things that were claimed in the past. But a lot of it is based around removing anything that could be interfering with the nervous system performing at its best, whether that be a local inflammatory response from a little injury to a muscle, lack of motion between segments can interfere with how the nervous system perceives what's happening at the spine and can change how muscles function and things like that in the area. So that's kind of the traditional approach, is just a very manual, hands-on, moving the joints and muscles around the spine to improve how the nervous system works. I see it more as an opportunity to improve position and motion and firing of muscles and joints in the body, and then turning around and using my strength and conditioning background to help the person understand how to create better movement around what we've done and create better strength and awareness and proprioception and motor control around anything we've changed to help get them, a decreased pain response, desensitized, may reduce some inflammation because they can move more and their body can, contract the muscles and flush the lymphatics. There's a lot that goes into it. And, most people that I see that have pain, they have either a lack of motion or they move too much. We'll see that in people that are what we call hypermobile, like their joints are excessively moving. And then we have to either teach that person to control their excessive movement or teach them how to improve their movement and keep it that way. And that's where I've found it's the best to help kind of meld those two ideas together between chiropractor and strength coach.
And do you see many patients that have been sort of told by their doctor that they really need a back operation, and you've worked with them and decided that that wasn't the case?
Well, I have probably a little of both. I would say more often than not, where I live, I've seen a person after they've had back surgery and they still don't feel like they've gotten what they wanted out of it. Either they're still in pain, like they have less pain, but there's still residual pain, like maybe they're having pain in their leg, but now it's just in their back, or they still don't feel like they can move as well as they should. And there's a lot of reasons for that, whether they didn't follow through with aftercare guidelines from the physician, or maybe there weren't any. It's hard for me to really tease all that out. As far as taking people that have been told they need surgery and help keep them from that, well, I've had plenty of those as well. And it's not that you always get every single one of those people to zero pain, but many times you've taken them from what they describe as like an 11, they're under a shark attack all the time. And you bring them back to a level, at least, that is manageable, and they can sleep and they can do the things that they like, but they still might be bothered.
And are you able to sort of, I guess, summarize or give us an indication? You mentioned hypermobility.
Yes.
And I assume weakness is another thing. What would be the most common, I guess, reason for back injury, do you think? Is there something that you could pinpoint?
The most common reason? Oh, man. This is a tough one because a lot of people just tell you my back started hurting, and they won't really have a great indicator in their history of a single particular incident that led them to come to your clinic because they're in pain. It's many times they were probably standing at the bottom of a mountain watching the snow fall over time, and then they did nothing about it, didn't move out of the way, and then one day they got buried by an avalanche, and here they are wanting me to pull them out, but they really don't have a clear indication of why it happened in the first place. If somebody has a history and can give me a story around why they're in pain, many times it's something that sounds like it shouldn't have hurt them at all from your perspective as a clinician, but like their body wasn't prepared for it because of maybe years of not having the proper motor control and strength and movement around how they do normal everyday things. And the spine tends to have what's called shearing moments. I know we're not on video, but if you could imagine like stacking your fists on top of each other and then sliding them over top, the spine, when you need to like pick something up, let's say, is meant to, in a reflex, have all these tiny muscles around it kind of lock down before you move to keep your spine from shearing across itself as you bend over or whatever to pick something up. And a lot of the times when we see those kind of back injuries is somebody is just going down to get something pretty normal, like a pencil, a pillow, some laundry, and their body's not really prepared. The reflexes aren't quite what they should be. The spine has this little shearing moment, and then all of a sudden your brain interprets that as a threat and has to evaluate it for a possible injury. And so it starts to lock everything up. A lot of times they'll get these intense spasms that become interpreted as a pain response. And then the person has to stop what they're doing and try to evaluate what's going on. Is that a good answer?
Yeah. And do you think, it just seems to me now that so many people have back injuries. Has this always been the case, or do you think lifestyle has led us to this?
This is a great question. I've seen both sides of it working in just a short time that I have. And I also have a colleague who works with me who's been practicing. So I've been 11 years or 12 years, and he's like 42 years. So he's seen a lot more of this over time than I have. And we live in a rural area. I mentioned offline. I live in Northwest Iowa. A lot of traditionally manual labor intensive work. And what we've found over the years is our patient base that worked like a job that required a lot of manual labor, we typically didn't see them that often. And a lot of the times, if we saw them, it was because they were actually hurt, like something happened at the job that injured them, and they've come to us. And a lot of times it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to get them better because they also have this very active lifestyle around them that helps them improve quickly. Over time, though, we've noticed more and more of this, what I described earlier as like non-incident related back pain. And these people typically I don't want to say don't do much, but I think that's the best way to put it. They either have a job that doesn't require them to be very active, or they've gone from a job that did require them to have activity, and they either retired from that job or they got moved to a different position with that company and placed in a situation where they don't move around a lot. And they don't replace that loss of activity outside of work. They just end up going home and not doing much of anything else. And I feel like we see these reflexive things around the spine start to degrade when they're not used. And it makes sense. I probably can't point you to 100 scientific papers that prove my point, but just to be able to make some of those logical conclusions of, well, if you don't use your spine in all the ways it was intended to, that it will start to not do that very well. I think observationally has been true for me.
Yeah, I can see that too. And you clearly have a passion for helping these, I guess, regular sort of people. Making time for high quality intentional training is, I guess, how I'd describe what you prescribe. Is that why you've written such books as Dad Strong and, I believe, Unfuck Yourself? What's your hope for your readers?
Oh, man, I'm glad you mentioned those books because I feel like they're great resources for the average person that is looking to get a better understanding of what could be going on with them. And I describe it as more like non-injury related issues. Like if you're somebody who back feels stiff or whose hips feel like they can't squat down all the way, their arms don't go all the way overhead, but they'd like them to because they want to get into Olympic lifting or kettlebell lifting or something like that. These books give people tons of video and explanation on why they might be where they're at and ways that are super easy to drop into any of their training that are big bang for their buck. Stuff that I've tested out over myself and over people over the years. A lot of it came down to, I kept telling people when I was out teaching or when they would come to my clinic, the same handful of things to work on the same handful of problems. And how long have you been coaching?
Over 10 years.
You probably notice that there's certain things that tend to solve a lot of problems. Would you agree?
Sure.
So the books were designed to give people over an hour of video of things that I would probably give them to do anyway if they were to, come all the way up to Iowa to see me. You can do that too, but we can always connect through the internet because I know I'm not easy to get to. But those books were designed with that purpose in mind. The person that is looking to maximize kind of their potential in strength training and make sure they can take away a lot of the roadblocks and the bottlenecks that a lot of people I've seen over the years run into when they're trying to train, particularly in the CrossFit community, which is where I really made my bones teaching and seeing over time, people run into the same problems, just making sure that they understand there's easy ways to get the desired result. You just kind of have to know where to look first. And as far as Dad Strong goes, that was kind of my call to my fellow dads out there that I see that are not taking care of themselves and have a family to support. And I just wanted them all to stop and take a hard look at themselves and say, is this really the person and the body? I don't even mean you have to have a six-pack abs and all that stuff. That's not the point of the book. The point of the book is, are you strong and capable And there's an old book by Chris McDougall called Natural Born Heroes. In that book, he talks about, I don't remember what native population it was, but their word for being fit was being useful. Is your body useful to you? Is it useful to other people? And I just wanted other dads to know that what you really have to do to move the needle in the right direction, to become, stronger, fitter, whatever the word is not that much. And if you can dedicate a couple hours a week to a very small handful of training ideas and just slowly and consistently progress, you can totally change your life and life of the people around you.
And it's interesting that you wrote that book, because I know a lot of dads that get dad belly or whatever when they have their children. And if you've got 4 kids, then surely they've got no excuse.
I try not to word it that way. You think that way sometimes. I may mention in the book, but it's important for me to portray that message to people. Is it's really about priorities. From when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, how do you prioritize each hour or each half hour or however you want to split up your day that you have? And sitting back and looking and saying, I keep telling myself and the people around me, I don't have time to do whatever it is that will make me healthier, stronger, more capable, more useful. When if you really look at your day, all you're really saying is, I'm failing to prioritize that in my life. Where else could I cut something out that isn't making me more useful, stronger, fitter, and plug that in instead? I hope that's not too hard a truth for people.
Well, I think that's a great truth for people. And I'm glad you address it, because so often the attention is on the mums and how to help the mums. But I love that you've written a book to help the dads. It's awesome.
So I'm married, and I've been married for 15 years. And if they're also married, they have to realize that part of it is you have to do a lot of those things too. A lot of that stuff that maybe you thought was, I hate to say like woman's work or something like that. Now, I don't even feel like I should say that, but it's unfortunately there's stereotypes around those things. A household works when everybody does what's needed to be done to make the house work, regardless of in their sexist views who thinks who should be doing what.
Yeah, I think you've put that quite eloquently. So I want to move on now from from being a dad to being a chiropractor. And I love the article that you wrote about one of your patients and their response to their injury of origin. Can you elaborate on this and share with us maybe some other interesting stories? Do you know which article I'm referring to?
Which story do you mean?
You wrote an article about the injury of origin. So you've obviously got a form that you get your clients to fill out. And one of the questions is, what is your injury of origin? And you're expecting your client to put ankle or whatever else. But in this case, the client put Afghanistan, I believe.
Okay, yes, I know who you're referring to now, yes. What made that patient interaction, and I still see him because we're still working together on what he had came to me for, but when he wrote that out, it really resonated with me because I have a brother who, he's still alive, but he served in the Mideast at the same time this guy did. They didn't know each other or anything like that. But when he wrote something like that, because I have experience not only with my own brother, but other veterans over the years, I know exactly what they mean. There's a lot to unpackage when somebody has an origin of injury from, combat, whether that means that I have to help him in my mechanical ways as a chiropractor, or I have to help him overcome some hurdles, mentally or psychologically, because there could be some of that attached to the injury as well that keeps him from improving the way he wants. You have to start to realize with people that it's never a strict kind of, this happened, I hurt now, you have to do this to make me better. There's always a lot of layers when you have to work with someone like that. You've got to unpackage, not only what they thought was the original injury, but why it keeps persisting. And kind of sometimes, like I said, you got to help them overcome some barriers in their own head about the injury and how it happened and why it happened and how they can recover from it. Because many times people like this have been told like, well, you're just going to have to live with that, or there's nothing else we can do for you, or here's another prescription of hydrocodone and hopefully it gets better this time. And no one's really addressing kind of more of the layers of what's going on with them. And I hate to say that sometimes you just have to give people a sliver of hope that they can improve, but sometimes you're the first person that says to them, I think I've got an understanding of what's going on. This is what I think is going to help you improve. And I feel like if we work together, you can get better. And, sometimes they've never heard that. No one's ever told them that that's a possibility. And just that much can help them start turning a corner.
It's almost like you have to go beyond just being a chiropractor, but almost a psychologist.
Yes, they forget to tell you in school that part of the job is psychology. And actually, the longer you practice, the more you understand that a big percentage of the job is how you interact and communicate with the person that's in front of you, and understanding how to read who they are as a person, how to read between the lines of the information they're giving you sometimes, and how to ask the right questions to really kind of dig into why they're there in the first place. And hopefully you can find something to latch onto so you can get their guard down and start to have good conversations with them about getting them better. Everyone's a little apprehensive when they see you, especially if they've never been before, and you've got to disarm them in a way to get them to really be prepared to do the work.
Yeah. And Travis, one other question I wanted to ask you regarding, I guess, strength and conditioning for our listeners who perhaps haven't done strength and conditioning before, or any sort of mobility work, or even if they have and they wanted to do a course to get better, would you sort of say that kettlebells, barbells, MobilityWOD, where would you start, or why is one better than the other, and which one is it?
Man, that's a big question. I would say for the average person, I feel like the best places to start are with a kettlebell or dumbbells and some body weight, and something like MobilityWOD, and maybe not for the reason that they might think. I feel like it does the best job of exposing people to all the positions that their body can get into, so that they can do over a few weeks kind of a self-assessment of where they're currently at with their ability to move into different ranges of their body to go to where they feel like they're safe, or they don't feel like they are safe, or they feel like they can breathe, or they can't breathe. I feel like that's a really underutilized self-test of where you really are with your positions. If you're putting your arms all the way over your head, but you can't breathe, are you really truly having your arms overhead effectively? Or if we have you in a deep squat and you can't breathe, or we're putting you in different shapes and you have to hold your breath to get there, that's a big indicator of if your body's really comfortable to be there or not. MobilityWOD does a nice job. We all do. I work for them. I teach for them. And I'm on some of the videos on the website. We do a nice job of helping people kind of explore their own body and say, oh, I can't quite lunge. These are some things that I can do that are quick and effective that can get me into that shape more efficiently so that I can start doing some training. Because I think the biggest mistake people make is trying to separate out quote unquote mobility work from their strength training, and not understanding that they work best when they're paired together in an intelligent way. So let's say you're doing something with your hips to make your squat a little bit deeper. The next thing you need to be doing is getting some kind of load on your body and working with some sort of tempo and control into that squat that you might have just improved, and get your nervous system to accept those new ranges, to learn those new ranges, to start applying some strength and control and stability around those new ranges so you can keep making progress. You can't just do one or the other. You have to do both. And one of the big issues I've run into over the years is people that want to just focus on their mobility for gain. And I try to remind them that that's kind of a fool's errand. You have to learn the power of combining and understanding that they're kind of two sides of the same coin, and both are going to help you lead to better performance, more efficient movement, which in theory is going to keep you from getting injured as often. But everyone can always be crazy and do too much and end up in my office anyway. So you got to watch out for that too.
Obviously, mobility and strength go hand in hand, but do you think most people are lacking mobility or strength?
Well, this is a tough one, because sometimes people will look like they're lacking mobility when really they're lacking strength and stability around a certain position. So their body, particularly their nervous system, their brain, their spinal cord, will start to put brakes on positions it doesn't feel like it can control.
Can you give us a definition of mobility?
Yeah. Mobility is your body's ability to control your available ranges of motion. That's really what it means. And that will change over time. It's something that can be improved as well, though. We can increase our range and increase our control of that range. And that's like the distinction between flexibility and mobility. Flexibility is just this idea that you can bend something. And it doesn't necessarily mean you can control it or have strength around it. And you can talk to anyone who's done a lot of yoga and maybe didn't do a lot of strength training. And a lot of times they'll end up in that hypermobile state I discussed earlier where, well, sure, they're flexible, but they don't have a lot of strength or control. And it can be just as dangerous. Mobility is really about, can you move with control and through the ranges that you have available? And that can be changed over time if you work on it and address it.
Excellent. If people want to know more about mobility, where would the best place to go?
If you want to find out more about what we do there, it's www.mobilitywod.com. We put up daily videos. Like I said, I'm not on a lot of the videos. I'm on just a handful here and there. I'm mostly a lecture guy. I do the performance course you mentioned earlier, where we discuss the very basic and fine points of creating tension and foot position and trunk control and trunk stability and breathing and bracing and setup around lifting weights, where a lot of people have never really been coached in that way before. They've been told, like, this is the bar, now squat, but they've never been given a lot of instruction on how to set up with intention and power so you can move weights efficiently and effectively without getting injured. Our 102 course is for coaches to help kind of expand their knowledge around assessing where athletes may be missing ranges of motion and motor control, and helping athletes find quick and simple ways to improve their ability to move under load so that they can kind of get away from a nagging injury or hopefully avoid injury altogether in the future, which is tough to do. There's a few online courses on there as well.
Great. Look, thank you so much. I'm very wary of your time too. And before I let you go, I've got to ask you a quick question. Do you have a tattoo?
Yeah. I have no tattoos.
Have you ever thought about it?
I have never thought about getting a tattoo. Is this a personality question now?
It's a personality question. It tells me a lot. Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, this was great, and I hope people got a lot out of it. The other thing I want to mention is my personal website. Do you mind?
No, go for it.
Is www.clinicalstrength.co. It's not a .com, it's a .co. And you can find all my seminar schedule on there. Like the MobilityWOD site has everyone who works for us's schedule. My site has my own schedule,
and
access to all the books, my blog posts. And I recently started podcasting, which is basically just me ranting at my laptop for 25 minutes once a week. If people are interested in that, they can check those out there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Travis. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, and great talking with you.
For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ali.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.